So I am going to call the meeting to order. And while I'd love to give folks a little more time to join, we actually have a bit of a time constraint, at least at the beginning of our meeting. When Chloe agreed to join us, she pointed out that she has another standing Thursday meeting. And so she's going to take 20 minutes from that to join us and give us a bit of a brief on the priority bills that she's been working on, that she's trying to accomplish rather in the legislature. And so with no further ado, our state senator from Lincoln County, Chloe Maxmin.
Hi, everyone. I'm so happy to be with you tonight. I'm sorry that I have a bit of a time crunch, just that time of year where meetings are all times of day. Anyways, it's really good to see all your faces. So I can talk a little bit about the bills that I'm working on this session and a little bit of what the session is actually looking like with COVID. And I'm also happy to answer any questions. So I put in 13 bills this year, which was a pure coincidence for District 13. I realized it after the fact. All but one came directly from conversations that we had on the campaign trail or from constituents who were having challenges. To highlight some of the top ones that I'm excited about, I have a big bill in to amend the Maine Constitution to guarantee a right to clean air, clean water, and a healthy environment. Have been doing a lot of work with constituents on that one and really excited about its potential. Laws can come and go, permits can be given and revoked, but the Constitution is there to stay. And I feel like it's really important that we have foundational environmental legal standing for the future of our legislating in Maine. So that's a big one. I have a big bill in with the unions around green jobs. It's a bit complicated, but it will really ensure that any green jobs that we have in Maine are genuinely good jobs, whether it's around building infrastructure or transportation or renewable energy projects. So that one's coming out soon. I have in a bill to create semi-open primaries, so independents could choose whether they wanted to vote in a Democratic or Republican primary. I think that one's going to be a little bit louder than I had intended it to be, but I'm really excited about it, and we're doing a town hall for it this weekend if anyone is interested. I have a bill in with the Lincoln County Sheriff's Office to create better avenues for alternative sentencing programs. So basically saying we don't have to convict someone and send them to jail if there are other ways to work with these folks in our community. I have a bill in to make sure that every county in Maine has a recovery community center. I'm working with the Maine Recovery Advocacy Project on that bill. They have a lot of amazing bills in this year around substance use and recovery. So that one's really important. And those are the big ones. I have smaller ones in around mental health certifications and adjusting some of the language in the sexual assault statutes and making sure that there's oversight for in-home care. It's interesting because kind of group elder care there's oversight by the state, but private in-home care isn't. So doing a lot of work around that. And I have a bill in to make sure that the Francis Perkins Homestead has the funding that it needs to become available and open to the public in the near future. The hearing for that one is March 3rd. And another big one is I have a bill in trying to figure out different models for transportation access in rural communities. So I have a bill in that would use Maine Care Section 19, which is seniors and adults with disabilities who are living at home but otherwise could qualify for a nursing home level of care. It would tell DHHS to institute a pilot project that would basically give Section 19 folks a stipend to use as they need for non-medical transportation purposes. Because right now through Maine Care, you can get a ride to the doctor, but you can't get a ride to pick up your prescription or go to the grocery store or go to the bank. And so we're trying to expand what Maine Care can do with this model. So those are my bills. I am on the Agriculture, Conservation, and Forestry Committee, as well as the Marine Resources Committee this year, which are both, specifically for District 13. We are meeting virtually right now. All committees are virtual, but just got news today that we'll be going into Augusta on March 10th and 11th to the Civic Center for big days of voting. It looks like what we're going to do is a lot of virtual committee work. Committees will get through their bills and report them out, and then we'll go into Augusta for a couple days at a time, really long days to vote on stuff, and then go back to virtual life. So that's what it's looking like right now. I'm doing my constituent office hours every month. February's is going to be on Sunday, February 28th from 12 to 1 p.m. You can find all the info for that on my Facebook page, which is Chloe for Senate on Facebook. And you can see all that info even if you don't have a Facebook account. So that's when you can get in touch. I also just, please call or email me anytime if you have any questions about what's going on or bills, or you have an issue or anything like that. My phone number and email are also on my Facebook page and everywhere in general. And then I think the last thing to mention is that although we are virtual right now, the process for participating in legislative life I think it's a lot more accessible than it has been before. It's really anyone can, you don't have to come to Augusta anymore to give in-person testimony. Anyone from anywhere in the state can sign up online. I can put the link into the chat. You kind of just look at the committee, you email the committee clerk, and they'll get you signed up for the day that you want to testify on a bill. I'm also happy to walk you through that process if it's confusing at all. But it's a little bit of waiting on Zoom for your turn to testify, but it is accessible. And I think that's really important. So I just blabbered a lot. I can stop there if anyone has any thoughts or questions about what's going on in Augusta right now. I'm happy to answer them.
Great. So show of hands from people if you want to speak. And just a reminder, for most Zoom clients these days, that's under the reactions available if you're using one on a laptop of some kind, Mac or Windows, it's the bottom of the Zoom screen. So I'll start with Ina.
Hi, Chloe. Thank you for being here. About LD2, what do you think?
I am very much in support of LD2. For folks who haven't heard of it, LD2 is a bill put in by Rachel Talbot Ross to make sure that every bill that we pass has a racial impact statement attached to it. It's just like one of the most foundational ways that we can pay attention to how our policy is influencing race in our state for white folks and for people of color. So it's a really important bill. I did submit testimony in support of it, and I'm excited to vote on it.
Yeah, what do you think? Will it pass?
I don't know. One of the downsides of not being in Augusta is it's hard to stay in touch with the chatter, and like what folks are thinking. So the people I'm talking to are really excited about it, but it's hard to say. And Kelly just said in the chat, it was approved out of committee this week, 7-5. So I bet that's one of the ones we'll be voting on in March.
Thank you, Chloe.
Anyone else? So I don't see any hands raised from anyone with a client, but if you've joined by phone, you can raise your hand with *9.
I see Tom and Wendy have a hand raised.
Okay, I've got several now.
Oh, okay.
Why don't you recognize them in whatever order you see them there?
I saw Tom and Wendy first, so we could go there.
Okay, Chloe, could you talk about what you see as the advantages of an open primary system?
Yes. I think that a lot of people are being excluded by the party system right now on many levels. And I think that primaries are a big part of it, because independents are going to vote on primary candidates in the general, but they have no say in who those people are. I think that the conversations within the parties around primaries is really important as well in terms of kind of dictating our general political conversations and ensuring that we don't drift too far to either extreme. And I think that we're leaving out, in our community, we're leaving out over a third of our neighbors from that process. Most new Mainers are registering as independent voters. Most young people are registering as independent voters, and most veterans are independent voters. Another big fact is that when automatic voter registration is coming online in states, vast majorities of people registering are registering independent. So in Oregon, when they switched to AVR, 80% of new voters registered as independent. And we're about to go, we approved automatic voter registration last session. So that's about to come online. So that's all to say, there's a lot of people voting who are going to be left out of the process and feel further disenfranchised. It's a huge thing that I heard when I was knocking on doors this year. And one of the reasons I put it in is because I promised so many people that I would. I think it has the ability to really change our conversations. I think, we're trying to figure out ways to work with the party on it and make sure that, theoretically you could track if someone got a Democratic or Republican ballot when they went to vote in the primary. But, yeah, it's pretty closed right now.
Just a quick observation, there's a little bit of common feel to it as the influence on how candidates will try to appeal to voters. Some similarities in the primary process with that to what ranked choice voting does to general elections. I mean, you've got people in the primaries that aren't going to be able to win a primary just by going to their strongest base and saying things that are not values that a lot of other people in Maine share. So if they're going to be ultra partisan about it, you're not going to do well in a primary. But if you're talking about your values and it strikes a good chord with people, that would be a very different response in the primary. Yeah. I've got Kelly Whitlock Burton and then Katie Huntington.
I just wanted to say I love the article in The Nation, Chloe. We've shared that around to the membership. And I wanted to ask, what is the title of your green jobs bill? I want to be able to track it. And I know it hasn't printed yet, but I can track it if I know the title. It's kind of hard for me to tell from your list of bills which one it is.
It's the one on equity in the clean energy economy. It has a really wonky title that hides it.
An act to ensure equity in the clean energy economy by providing a limited tax exemption, that one?
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay.
Yeah, it's going to be an amazing bill, but that I'm going to change the title. I haven't gotten the language back, the draft language back, so it's going to be a while before it's out.
The last thing I wanted just to mention was a couple of our members wrote letters to the editor in favor of LD 17, your bill to expand Maine Care to cover the transportation you were talking about. And I was just looking to see if I could find the links, and I can't find the links in the Lincoln County News, but people have been talking about it, so that's great. Thank you.
I saw them in the paper. Yeah, thank you all so much. It's a really cool bill. I hope it passes.
Katie Huntington. Can you unmute yourself? It's *6 on your phone, Katie. There you go.
Hi. Lovely. Chloe, I was interested in the status of Seth Berry's bill. He's had it already in 2 years, and they're trying to have the state take over the transmission and distribution of energy so that we would not be saddled with the continuing saga of disappointment in CMP in Emera, and be able to better come to pass the energy future that we all want with more green energy without them sticking their feet in the way.
Yeah, good question, Katie. I don't know the status of it. I'm in support of it. I know that there's a lot of organizing happening around it, but I don't think there's an LD number yet. I don't know, Kelly or someone might know. Kelly's shaking her head. Yes. So,
okay.
Yeah, I guess it's not out yet, but I'm definitely in support of it.
Thank you for that support, and we look forward to getting the LD so we can write in support of it too. Yes. Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay. So we then have Julia Fitzgerald.
Good evening. I have a question for you, Chloe. Can you hear me? Am I unmuted?
I can hear you.
Thank you. What is your sense about the constitutional amendment that David, I believe it's David Merriman, is proposing to enable the legislature to participate in ranked choice voting?
I am not familiar with that one. I would have to go look at the language before I answered in full, but I can definitely go take a look and follow up with you if you want to shoot me an email or something like that.
I'll just put it in the chat if that's okay.
Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Because I understand that it's being proposed, and as we know, the state legislature isn't able to be elected by ranked choice voting, and it's going to take a constitutional amendment to make that happen. So I'm really hopeful that, are you hearing any buzz? Where are we on all of it? I know it's a difficult thing to make happen, but.
This is the first that I've heard of it. So, but I'm sure that it will be getting a lot of attention.
Okay, I'll put my, thank you for following up, and I'll put my email in the chat.
Okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
All right, I don't see any other hands raised. Raise hand under reactions or *9 on your phone.
I'm sorry, I had a question on the chat. I didn't raise my hand because I didn't know how to do that.
Okay. Mike,
Yes.
go ahead.
Hi, Chloe. Thank you for all you're doing. I saw that you are supporting or co-sponsoring the bill that will give representation to the tribes on DMR in the DMR Advisory Committee. There's a parallel bill, as I understand it, in Inland Fish and Wildlife as well. Are you supporting that one or co-sponsoring it?
I co-sponsored that one because the tribal representatives asked me to, and so I'm in support of the other bill, but they didn't ask me to co-sponsor it, so I didn't nudge my way in there. But I'm in support of all of the bills that increase tribal representation, and obviously the tribal sovereignty bill or bills.
Hooray! Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else? I saw clapping hands from Marianne and Rocket. Is that, yeah?
Yeah, yes. We are here. Just a question from several people on what are the best strategies for advocating for the Maine Care Transportation bill?
So it is going into work session on Tuesday, and I think, you know, if anyone wanted to look up the committee members of Health and Human Services and contact them or submit testimony between now and Tuesday, you can absolutely do that. I think my sense is that the Democrats are on board and the Republicans don't really want to spend money this session, so I'm not sure, but I'm hopeful for a good vote out of committee. And then the big work that we can all work on is when we vote on it in March, and just making sure that that vote is going to be a good vote. Thank you, Kelly. Kelly is on top of everything. Kelly put the link to HHS and all the committee members on there. Yeah, I just talked to the Republican lead on the committee today, and they haven't had a chance to caucus it, so I don't have an awesome sense of where to direct folks, but I generally don't think work sessions are the best use of movement energy. I think that can come when we vote on it.
I think, Chloe, this is Holly. I think several of the HHS committee members are co-sponsors on the Democrat sides, which is really good for you. But as Lincoln County Democrats, I don't know if it would make any sense. I'm saying right now, this may be nonsense, this next statement, if people could right to Representative Lemlin. He's also on HHS. And since we're Lincoln County Democrats and he represents a piece of Lincoln County, I'm not sure it would achieve anything, but I'm just putting it out there that maybe, I mean, I'm voting for it. But I'm trying to think. And then the other would be Representative Hanley. I don't know. Well, that will come later. But as far as committee goes, it would be Representative Lemon, if anything, that we could at least ask you to, because we've got the Democrats. It's going to, I mean, otherwise it comes to an 8-4, you know, within the 8-5 actually in our committee. So that's my thought.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Holly. I didn't see you on here before.
I don't see any further hands raised. And I know you're short on time because you've got another meeting to go to.
Yeah.
So since there aren't any further questions, I just think it's time for us to say thank you for coming, filling us in. And if anyone wants to know more, coming up, next weekend is your office hours? So,
Coffee with Chloe.
great.
12 to 1, but always open to chatting beyond that 1 hour as well.
Okay. Thanks.
Good night,
Thank you very
everybody.
much.
Bye.
Round of applause for Chloe. Really appreciate your time and the values that you're representing for us in the legislature.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Our next guest is from Maine Equal Justice. And if you're not particularly familiar with—
I'm sorry, Chris, could you tell everybody that we're recording? I think we're actually required to let everybody know that we were recording actually since Chloe started.
All right. Everyone hear that?
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Maine Equal Justice used to go by the name Maine Equal Justice Partners, but they are an organization that I didn't know much about before I first got involved with the legislature. And once I did, I realized that if there is one advocacy group that deserves to be called the angels among the lobbyists, Maine Equal Justice folks are it. They are there to look out for the basic rights and needs of people, particularly those who don't have advantages and privileges and have a great deal of difficulty getting through life. And I don't know how they do it day in and day out and the kinds of hours they put in before the various committees, even into the wee hours of the night before appropriations, looking out for and fighting for things. And when we had the LePage administration and people wanted to know something about the rules and the statutes within DHHS, it was the Maine Equal Justice people in the committee rooms that knew the answers that the LePage appointees did not know, because they know them inside and out. So we're very fortunate that we have a community organizer. And I'm looking for where, there it is. Ambureen, and I'm probably clobbering this, I'm trying. It's pronounced rather like umbrella, she said. So Ambureen from Maine Equal Justice and is the community organizer. If you'd unmute yourself, please.
Yeah, thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate that thoughtful introduction. And thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you to you and Autumn for organizing that. And I just want to give a shout out. I see that we have Representative Holly Stover. Thanks for joining us. Really great to have elected officials here as well. It was great to hear from Chloe. Shout out to any other elected officials that may be on the call that I may have not noticed. We have 3 pages of attendees here. So my name is Ambureen. I am the community organizer at Maine Equal Justice, and I'd love to talk to you a little bit more about Maine Equal Justice before we get started, just in case some of you aren't familiar with our organization. I really love the intro that Chris gave. I think that was beautiful. Is it okay, Autumn and Chris, is it okay if I share my screen? I think I might actually just need to become a co-host if that's okay.
Here you go.
Awesome. Let's do it. Okay, folks, so you should be able to see my screen now. So just a quick intro to Maine Equal Justice. Excuse me for one moment, my computer's a little slow today because like many of you, I have a million tabs open. So we are, of course, a nonprofit. We're a civil legal aid organization. So civil legal aid, when you think about that, you might think of organizations like Pine Tree Legal, but we're also an economic justice organization, and we do advocacy. So that's something that separates us from a lot of those legal aid organizations, is that we actually advocate, do like litigation, organizing, and direct support to people. So our goal is to increase economic security, opportunity, and equity for all people in Maine. We advocate for fair public policies in the legislature and in governmental agencies, so also in DHHS, at the Department of Labor, all of those administrative agencies as well. We provide direct legal services to people that are navigating those systems. So we actually have people that we have our paralegals who actually spend their days taking phone calls, taking emails from people, taking Facebook messages from people that are having difficulty navigating, let's say DHHS, they're trying to get their main care, maybe their food stamps were cut off, maybe they're having trouble navigating unemployment. And a lot of those issues administratively are actually, so Chris had mentioned our previous administration that was run by Governor LePage. A lot of the issues in the DHHS system is because like funding and training was taken away from those staff at that time. So we're still working to educate staff on statutes and the actual law and the protections that people have when it comes to their rights to access public benefits. We also, so the thing that I do at Maine Equal Justice as a community organizer is this last bullet point. So partnering with diverse low-income communities and agencies through outreach, through organizing, and through education. So I work directly with low-income people that are directly impacted by the issues of economic insecurity, poverty, and work with them to elevate their voices so that they can fight by our side to make the change that needs to happen in our state. And one value that I really appreciate about our organization is that we see poverty as a systemic problem. Because very often in the media, institutionally, ideologically, poverty is often represented as a personal struggle, which we don't believe. We actually believe that it's rooted and perpetuated by unjust laws and policies, things that affect lack of access to education and training, higher wages, healthcare, housing. So we believe that poverty is not a personal fault, it's a systemic issue. So I really appreciate that about my organization because it's a value that I hold myself. So that's a little bit about Maine Equal Justice. And I'm hoping that today, I'm just gonna skip a few slides because a couple of, I think you guys already know each other and we don't have a lot of time today. I know that you all already live these community agreements that are shown on the slide. So because I've seen it demonstrated just by joining you today. So I'm going to skip that slide as well, because it looks like you already have a really beautiful flow when it comes to like one person speaking at a time and raising your hand and all that stuff. So so today's discussion, we're going to talk about, of course, like what is legislative advocacy. I'm sure so many of you are already familiar with that. Tips for effective advocacy. I'd love to hear about the things that you guys are focusing on, which I heard a little bit about as you were talking with Chloe. I'd love to talk to you about our legislative advocacy calendar and our priorities. I think that's going to be the biggest part of our conversation, actually, is going to be our priorities for 2021. And then at the end of our conversation, after you ask questions, I'd love for you to sign up for action with me. So I'll have a little form. I'll make sure I send it to, if you can't access the form while we're in the meeting, I'll make sure to send it to Chris and Autumn so that they can get it to you. So you guys can help us with our priorities this year. So just to start, I'd love to hear from you all what legislative advocacy means to you. So let's do that thing where we raise our hands and I can call on people. I'll try to look out if you're raising your hand physically too. What is legislative advocacy to you? And also I'd love to hear from you. So like, let's broaden this question. What are the values that you're holding right now during this pandemic? What do you want to most advocate on? What issues are you seeing in your community?
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of a two-parter. So what does legislative advocacy mean to you? And what are the values that you want to hold up this legislative session? Linda.
Hi, I'm really excited that you're here. And yeah, the reason I've gotten involved in politics anyway is for mental health issues and mental health care providers and the managed care system. And, you know, we're spending more time in crazy loops with the insurance companies, and it's taking away from clinical time. And I've actually lost clients, you know, because, you know, the frustration with the mental health system. And we know now, I mean, suicide's the #1 issue for death, and now childhood suicide. And every day I'm on a therapist forum, and, you know, the referrals that are coming in every day. It's just, so somebody, and I've heard, and so my question is that I've been asking, I've written to all our legislators, and I finally got the answer that there is none. But the question is, who is the advocate on behalf of mental health providers when dealing with insurance companies, or who has oversight of the insurance companies on behalf of mental health care providers? So I really appreciate you hearing that question. And as I've said, you know, I always get sent to the Maine Insurance Bureau, but they only advocate for subscribers. And there literally is nobody has oversight of the insurance companies on our behalf. And I literally have 3 years of documentation that if I can find someone that, and I actually scheduled in to call you tomorrow because I'd love to just share the documentation I have. I mean, it's absolute insanity. And a lot of people are leaving the profession because of it. So thank you.
Linda, I so appreciate you sharing that, and just thinking about our community and everything that they're dealing with when it comes to their mental health and the increased severity of mental health issues over the pandemic. I think it's super important that we think about those mental health providers and like everything that they're carrying and holding, and how much more intense their jobs have gotten over this past year. I wrote down your question because I really want to find out more about that and get back more information to you. The first things that came to my mind were these 3 organizations, and I'm really curious which one might have the answer to this, but I'm so glad that you are connecting with us tomorrow, because my my folks, Mariah and Sue, who answer those calls, are just so skilled when it comes to finding the right people. But the first couple of organizations that came to mind for me would be the Maine Primary Care Association, because they do deal a lot with insurance, Consumers for Affordable Health Care. I'm really curious if they have any insight on who has that oversight. And then I know they're super over capacity right now because of everything that they're doing, but Disability Rights Maine also came to mind for me. So I would love to follow up with you to make sure that we get that answer. That's super important.
I mean, just to put it in perspective, I've been a clinician for 35 years. And the last year I made the decision to only work with one insurance company. So that eliminates a lot of clients. And last week I was on the verge of not even dealing with that anymore. I mean, it's taking so much time and it literally is interfering with the clinical work. And if I'm this frustrated, you know, after all this time, you know, because I'm usually pretty good at navigating and advocating, you know, on behalf of my clients. And I've told them that, you know, because of the insurance. So I'm sure, and I know that I'm not the only clinician out there. A lot of clinicians are leaving the field, you know, so I'll give you a call tomorrow. So thank you so much.
Yeah, please do. That's super heartbreaking because we need those clinicians more than ever right now, and supporting them is exactly what we need to do. I know one of my close colleagues is a client advocate over at Maple Wadsworth and like deals with insurance companies on a daily basis. And I just know how much work they put in just like working with clients. And it actually never occurred to me that like we actually need those advocates for the actual clinicians themselves, not just the clients. So I really hope we can find those people to help out. Thank you, Linda. Jeff, do you want to go next? I can't hear you. I think you're still on mute.
Can you hear me now? Great, thanks. This is kind of just expose my ignorance here, but people have spoken, I've heard people talk about testifying for legislative bills, et cetera. And that implies a certain level of expertise. But then it sounds as though almost people, anybody can talk. And so I guess my question is, you're getting feedback, aren't you? Let me try this.
That wasn't you, Jeff. It was someone else with an issue. I'm helping out.
Oh,
Go ahead.
At any rate, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. Yes. Okay, great. So my question is, can anybody testify? Is it simply a matter of advocating? Yes, I think that's a good idea. Or do you have to have some sort of experience or some sort of level of, like, I've got a PhD in this or that or the other?
I love this question, Jeff. I'm so glad that you asked it. This is so important to cover. So I'm really glad that you asked it. So really, I think the most powerful testimony comes from personal experience, whether it's sharing an experience that you have or something that you've seen in your community. So no, you don't have to be an expert. So like I put that in quotations because like when we talk about professionalism and like being an expert on something, I think that you can be an expert when it comes to your experience. You don't have to have a degree. You don't have to have training. You don't have to have fancy letters at the end of your name. I really do think that the most powerful testimony comes from the people that just like come as they are. And I think that our elected officials are always willing to hear those stories. I see Representative Stover nodding, like, you know, they want to hear what their constituents are experiencing, what they're saying. And yeah, I'm really glad that you asked that question. Rep Stover, do you want to follow up on that?
Sure. I would love to see everybody testify. If there's something you're passionate about, some of the most, and because I sit on HHS, and so we hear some of the most powerful testimony, I think. that happens, maybe criminal justice too, but we hear a lot of it. And I've been brought to tears. I'm not ashamed of that, but parents, loved ones, caregivers, people who live in communities who just love their neighbors and want to advocate for them for whatever reason, for whatever bill. It is the most moving, personal. It doesn't have to be your child. It doesn't have to be, it can be any connection that you have to the issue we're talking about. And it moves us in a much different way. And I love lobbyists. I don't want to not say that, but when you have somebody standing in front of you sharing something personal and they're connected to, and Chris Johnson will probably agree, you never forget it. You just never forget it. You carry it with you from that committee room right back into the House when you vote.
Definitely.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. Well, that brings us to the next slide. And Jeff, your question actually correlates really well with this. But legislative advocacy to us is, the efforts of organized people to influence public policy by means of persuasion or pressure on governmental authorities. And like when we say persuasion or pressure, it's really just about like sharing your experiences. Some of my coworkers are lobbyists, they're policy experts, but I don't consider myself that, because really what I'm doing is, and I can tell you, I'm really happy to share this with you about what my job looks like, but I connect with low-income people. I hear, what is your issue? What are you dealing with in your community now? And how do you want to change that? And that's actually how our priorities at Maine Equal Justice are set every year or every 2 years, depending on where we are in the session. So we sit down, we have a training about how to share your story with those people that are across Maine that are impacted by poverty. You'll see them in this picture right here. Those are a bunch of the folks. And we vote on, and the reason we vote is like, ideally we'd love to work on everything every single year, but people's capacity is stretched so thin. They're in school, they're single mothers, they're single fathers, they're working multiple jobs. So that's why we prioritize every year, is so that, people's capacity isn't stretched super thin, so that they're able to focus on putting their energy into the issues that they want to work on that year. So it's all about people raising their voices to solve the problems in their community, taking direct action to change laws, and those who are most impacted by the issues are the ones that are making the decisions, because it affects their lives. And I think that's exactly how it should be. An individual elected leader hasn't experienced all of the issues that everyone in their community has. So that's why it's so important that the folks that are most impacted by the issues are sharing their experiences with that elected official, sharing their stories, so that our elected officials can gain that perspective. And like Representative Holly Stover said, they carry those stories with them because our elected officials have empathy. Like they want to listen to their constituents, the people that they work for. Cool. Okay, I'm going to move to the next slide, my friends. So just a couple of quick tips on legislative advocacy, which I'm sure you all are familiar with. The first step is just to understand the legislature, understand how it functions. So, and I'm going to go over that just a little bit as I cover the legislative calendar. So we can talk a little bit about, depending on how much time we have, we might have to have a part 2 about how the legislature functions. But that's really the first step to understanding this. Learning, I think part of this is also learning what's the best way to communicate with your elected official. Like, for example, we just heard from Chloe, she has office hours like a couple of times a month, coffee with Chloe, you know, that's one way to reach her. She just shared like, email me, call me anytime. So figuring out, does your elected official like being tagged on Facebook? Do they prefer, are they more responsive through email, or do they prefer a phone call? Do they like it when you use the contact form that's on the legislative website? So like, that's also a part of the process, is like understanding, building a relationship with your senator and your representative and finding out what's the best way to communicate with them. Another tip is analyzing the structures of power, understanding who has influence on your elected official. Are they super aligned with the governor? Will they vote similar to how the governor is feeling? Is there an elected official that's a member of a committee that they're in that they go to for advice? So just like understanding how they vote and what kind of things will influence the power that they have. Some elected officials so I think that also takes like learning about their voting history and using that to your advantage. And the next one would be working with community partners. So working with partner organizations so that you are building your power together so that you can have more influence on your elected officials. I think part of that is also like working across identities. So if you have like an immigrant community in your county, or an organization that works with people of color or something like that, like building relationships with those groups so that you can build power together. And of course, lifting up the leadership of people with lived experience. So like the folks that have the stories that like the issues that you care about are most affecting. You want to make sure that you are lifting up their experience and that they're at the forefront of the fight. When it comes to tips to advocacy, I'd love to hear, is there, like from your experience, if there's anything that you would add to that, or if you have any questions. I'll throw it to Mike first.
Did you say to me?
Yes, sorry, I muted myself too soon. Yes, go ahead, Michael.
Two questions, really. You know, this has been one hell of a year. And I would think that the demand on your organization has got to have been near the peak of during its entire existence. Can you talk a little bit about how your organization has, how many people you've got working for you? Have you increased that? Has the load been overwhelming, number one? And second question is, how has the community response been in terms of supporting your efforts? How's fundraising gone?
Michael, I love that question. This is like self-care vent time. This is great. This is so important. So we really, you know, I feel really lucky that like for our safety, our organization, you know, it was like the third week in March. We're like, okay, take your computers home. You guys are working from home now. So that was really helpful. I really feel like we hit the ground running when it came to pandemic response. Our major goal was just to make sure that everyone across Maine has access to resources and knows how to get them. So our biggest focus at the first couple of weeks of the pandemic is like, let's create a website, let's get all of this client education out there so that people know, like, you can sign up for unemployment now, you can get your food stamps, you need to sign up for Maine Care, because if you lost your employer-based health care or if your income has dropped, we want to make sure that you are protected when it comes to your health care. And so that was our biggest thing at the very beginning of the pandemic. And of course, like, unemployment took over our worlds. You know, it's such a hard system to navigate. And, you know, unfortunately, due to previous administrations, you know, the website had glitches, and people were being denied even though they were eligible. So there were a lot of issues with unemployment. I'm sure you all experienced this, where like you had community members or friends or like social media friends that were having a lot of trouble navigating the unemployment website. So our capacity definitely increased. We were so lucky that one of our one of our legal aid support team members used to work at the Department of Labor navigating unemployment. So before that, before the pandemic, her work focused on helping people navigate DHHS, helping people navigate the TANF system, and FedCap and all of those things. But for like 6 months at the beginning of the pandemic, she was full on working on unemployment cases, and we were so lucky to have her expertise. So definitely right before the legislative session and for the first, I would say, 8 months of the pandemic, we were definitely hitting the ground running, and capacity was intense. But it was all, of course, like all of us were feeling so grateful that we had the ability to do it. We had added some folks to the team right before the pandemic, which gave us that added capacity. So some people kind of like altered their work plans to focus on pandemic risk. A lot of people actually, all of us did, instead of the projects that we were working on during the legislative session, we focused on pandemic response, because the pandemic started right in the middle of our second session last year. So all of our bills that we were working so hard on actually just, the word is died. All of those bills died. So we were like, okay, let's go. Let's shift gears here. We have been supporting and like lifting up mutual aid efforts, while at the same time making sure that, and like mutual aid is usually that we don't focus on that at Maine Equal Justice. We've just been uplifting other organizations that do that direct mutual aid. And for folks that don't know what mutual aid is, it's when you reach out to your community to help you financially, or organizations that give food directly, or organize donations of like direct money to people. So we don't do that at Maine Equal Justice, but like that was such a big thing that helped so many people at the beginning of the pandemic, that we were like lifting up those organizations, while at the same time just making sure that people knew that public benefits are available and that they're helpful, and just trying to eliminate the shame and stigma around public benefits, because there is so much shame. And I just want to have a one-on-one conversation with all of those people and let them know, like, you are deserving of healthcare, you are deserving of food in your fridge, you are deserving of like getting money from the government, because there are so many resources out there, and there's so many, we all pay into it, and we all deserve to get back. And all of our community members, whether they work or not, deserve survival and to thrive. So that answers a little bit of that question. We have gotten some really great support from those who are able to support, and really kind, sweet messages from those who are donating. And our development director often shares those messages with us, which uplifts us and keeps us going. It's really, thank you for asking that, Michael.
So, Ambureen, can you fill us in on a few of your priorities before we move on to our group discussion of common issue?
Yes,
Let us know how we can connect to help you with those efforts.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you so much for helping me switch gears. Yes, I'd love to talk to you all about our key priorities. And for folks that have questions that you weren't able to ask, please, I'm going to share my contact information, so please feel free to reach out. So our key priorities this year, which were decided by impacted people, who are directly affected by these issues are affordable housing, which, as you've seen, rental assistance, evictions, all of those things, you know, like they've, affordable housing, like the issues there have been uncovered so much throughout the pandemic. Yeah, the issues that people are dealing with when it comes to staying housed have increased a lot. Our second priority is healthcare equity and dental care. And this emoji came out a little weird. It's supposed to be like these hands. But that third priority is racial equity, which you guys are actually already touched on a little bit. LD2 was our major racial equity bill. There are other bills that will touch on racial equity. So I just want to talk to you about a couple of bills that I'd love to get you all involved in and get you excited about. So affordable housing, healthcare, dental access, and racial equity are our major priorities. The first one I want to talk to you about is the dental care bill. So this is a bill that we've been working on for over 3 years. The first year, unfortunately, we had a funding issue, and the second year was the pandemic, unfortunately. So that's the reason that that bill did not make it anywhere. So this bill means a lot to me. It's about making sure that adults who have Maine Care will have access to dental care. So right now, anyone over the age of 21, sometimes 20, if they have Maine Care, they do not have dental care access. It's only children that have dental care access. So this would create a comprehensive dental benefit. It includes preventative care, reparative care, or restorative care is actually the word, preventative, restorative, and like annual care for dental. So like it's all covered. Every aspect of dentistry is covered for this. And part of this bill also creates a working group that would start in the fall of 2021. And it would look at what's the best way to implement this bill, like whether it should be managed care, a fee for service. It's going to look into the technicalities of it. And it will also look into how to improve provider acceptance of Maine Care. I think that, there are dentists that, this kind of like touches on what Linda had talked about a little bit earlier, but there are dentists that don't take Maine Care right now. So this working group that would come would analyze how to improve provider acceptance of Maine Care. It's also going to look at racial and ethnic oral health disparities, and it will direct the Department of Health and Human Services to reduce those health disparities and think about that as they're implementing the benefit. So so this benefit would start in 2022. So
Ambureen, can I just, I work for Lincoln County Dental, and we just opened November 9th, and we are actually the only Maine Care accepting dental practice in Lincoln County. Nobody else takes it. And we have, before we opened, we had been offline for 4 years. Before we opened, there were none.
Wow. That's
So,
wild. That's so important to
we were
point
the
out.
only county in Maine that did not have a Maine Care accepting practice.
Wow.
So we're very excited about that.
Definitely.
We need that benefit because all we can do with adults are cleanings, exams, pain and infection. And then we have to get prior authorization for everything else. And it's a nightmare. So we need the benefit. And we need to lift. One of the provisions in that was also because I had filed it at the same time as Representative Brooks and I pulled mine out, but I thought it was to eliminate the prior auth, or is that not true?
I think that, I don't think that the bill is printed yet, but I'm gonna get back to you on that because I'm curious if that was.
It's a huge administrative burden. If a dentist says that something needs to be fixed, you should just believe the dentist.
Exactly. I had seen that concern come from an impacted individual as well. And I know that there was a response, so I just want to track it down because I believe that it was removed, but I just want to be for sure because that's super important. Like it shouldn't, you know, like people shouldn't have to prove or jump through hurdles to get that access to care. And like Representative Stover just pointed out, right now, how many dental offices function when it comes to Maine Care is that people have to like prove that they're in pain for them to even receive any care. It's really heartbreaking. And like, I don't want to just talk about the technical aspects of this bill. Like, let's talk about the practical aspects and like how what this looks like in real life. You know, like low-income people that are on Maine Care, you know, they're suffering, they're in pain every day because of their dental issues. It doesn't just cause issues with pain, it also causes issues with your mental health, because if you're not able to show your teeth, if you're not able to smile, if you're not able to have conversations, your confidence is going to be so low. If you want to get a job, if you want to go through a job interview, if that's something that you want in your life, you're going to be so much less likely to, you know, to want to be motivated to do that if you're not confident about your smile. And you know, dental infections are so detrimental to your health. You know, they can lead to brain infections, they can lead to heart infections, they could lead to abscesses that cause serious health problems that wind up putting so many people in the emergency room. And there's also a recovery aspect to this bill. You know, like if people are in constant pain, you know, they're not going to be able to stay on, if there's a person in recovery that has dental issues, they're not going to be able to stay on their path of recovery if they're in constant pain.
Sometime we'll have to hear more from Holly, who's dealt with both sides of that in Lincoln County as well.
I would love to do that. I have a lot to say about oral health care in Lincoln County and how it gets paid for and health parity for everything above your collarbone.
Okay, I put it on my list.
I love it. I really appreciate that. That's such an important perspective.
Well, your brain, if you talk about mental health, your eyes, your ears, your teeth, everything above your collarbones has no health parity with everything below your collarbones, and it drives me crazy.
Absolutely. That's so true. You know, and, you know, once we get dental care covered, our next step is, you know, our people are saying that they want to work on eye care next. You know, like we've got to make sure that we get all of those things covered. And, you know, the goal with all of this is like, it's moving us closer and closer to having all of our healthcare covered. My personal value and goal is universal healthcare, and I'm sure a lot of you agree with that. And so the other bill that I just want to quickly touch on is, which has to do with healthcare equity, is this bill that would provide access to Maine Care to immigrants. So it would close eligibility gaps by creating a category for Mainers who don't qualify for Maine Care right now because of their immigration status. So in 1996, Maine lawmakers, in a bipartisan way, passed this bill that would maintain Maine Care coverage for immigrants. It was already available, but there was a federal bill that took it away, or not a bill, but a federal action that took it away in 1996. So Maine lawmakers came together in a bipartisan way, which is beautiful. And like they made sure that they voted to maintain that coverage for immigrant people. In 2011, in a very xenophobic move, Governor LePage took away that access that immigrant people in Maine had for decades. So we want to reverse that. We want to give that access back to people. This bill is also not printed yet, but it is called an Act to Improve the Health of Maine Residents by Closing Coverage Gaps in Maine Care and the Children's Health Insurance Program. It's sponsored by Representative Rachel Talbot Ross. And side note, I think it was added in the chat, but our dental bill is sponsored by Representative Ryan Fecteau, who is the Speaker of the House, which is awesome. So, you know, in the middle of a pandemic and recession, it's more clear than ever that our collective safety and our economic recovery are tied to each person's ability to go to the doctor and fill the prescription. So it's clear that making sure that our immigrant neighbors have access to healthcare will create a healthier environment for all of us. Maine is stronger, healthier, and more resilient when everyone has healthcare. And this bill will ensure that all Maine residents with low income have access to Maine care coverage. And it's a huge step in the fight for a healthcare system that works for all of us, because that's our goal, is making sure that everyone in our community has the access to healthcare that they need.
So how can people connect with your and support your efforts to?
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry that we're running out of time, Chris. That's great. I'm so glad that you asked that question. So I am going to put a link in the chat, which I will actually highlight right now. And folks, so I'll actually show you the form on my screen. Can you guys see that? Mm-hmm. Okay, awesome. Yeah. So if you all could take a second to fill out this super quick form, you'll see my contact information in there. So it's just your first name, your last name, your phone number, your email, your zip code is so I know what district you're in. And if you could just check off what are the issues that you most care about, it will make it so that I get a list of who to contact about these issues. So you'll see that dental care is on there. You'll see that immigrant access is on there. So you want to click that if you want to be involved with the immigrant access to healthcare bill. You'll see racial justice in housing. And I'm just going to make sure to send that link to Chris so that you can, so that if you can't fill it out right now, you guys will be able to do that.
Yeah, and I think not only can we share that, but it might be a good idea for us to connect with you so that we get information that you want more people to hear about for opportunities, even for those who don't sign up, get the word out to folks through our lists.
Definitely.
So we'll have to set something up for that too, where to send, what email to send that to. So
exactly, that sounds great. And I'm happy to help coordinate to put an email together that we can send out to your list as well.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, thank you guys so much for taking the time and for all your wonderful questions. I'm around, so feel free to reach out. I'm excited to continue this conversation and to work with you on these great bills.
Thank you, Ambureen.
Thank you.
Could we have a little round of applause for Ambureen? All that we learned about Maine Equal Justice. Thank you. What you're working on.